This is John Drabinski, and you're listening to the Black Studies Podcast, a series of conversations examining the history of the field. Our conversations engage with a wide range of activists and scholars, senior figures in the field, graduate students, and everyone in between, culture workers and political organizers, in order to explore the cultural and political meaning of Black studies as an area of inquiry and its critical methods. Today's conversation is with Courtney Patterson-Faye, who teaches in the Department of Sociology at Wesleyan University. In addition to essays on Black feminist theory, fat studies, and sexuality and cultural studies, she is the author of The Body Contract, Black Women, Culture, and the Impossibilities of Fatness, forthcoming with NYU Press. In this conversation, we discuss the expansiveness of Black study, the relevance of Black fat studies for the field, and how Black studies makes critical interventions inside disciplines. Good morning, Courtney. How are you today?
Good morning, John. I am well. How are you?
I'm good. Currently getting ready to endure a crazy heat wave, as I was telling you before. So I'm up here on the third floor where the air conditioner is already making weird noises. If anybody hears that in the background, trying to keep up, try to keep John alive. But other than that, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast for a number of reasons. Your research is really interesting. I think the perspective you're going to have is interesting for many, many different reasons. But also, and I wanted to really note this from the beginning, your PhD is in the field of Black studies.
Yes.
And for Ashley and myself, when we created this podcast, this was really a priority for us, was to have people on the podcast with PhDs in the field. So I just always note that because I think that's a perspective that's really at the core of the podcast rather than one voice among others. And so it's just always a real treat for us to have people on the podcast with doctorates in the field. So all that's to say, welcome to the Black Studies Podcast, and I look forward to chat.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, we'll have a chance to talk about your research, the kind of things you work on, how you think about that in relation to the history and the future of Black studies and all of that. But I wanted to start with a more personal question, really, and ask you, what is it that drew you to Black studies? What drew you to the study of Black life? And what keeps you connected to and sustains you in relation to this kind of work?
Well, I mean, when you said you were on the third floor and the air conditioner was already making noise, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, chocolate melts. So my entire kind of like landscape and analytic or lens about the world is couched in Blackness, and not what, whiteness invented it to be, but like that grassroots rejection of, embracing of joy, those kind of things. So all my degrees are in Black studies, undergrad, master's, and PhD. I've been reading since I was 3 years old, and my grandmother, who is the only one of her siblings to graduate from high school, had like instilled this love of education and learning in all of her children and all of her grandchildren in ways that she particularly poured into me because she raised me early on. And so I remember always like loving books. She would call me an educated fool. So I would sneak and read books at 2:00 in the morning with my little flashlight. Because I was supposed to be asleep and get ready for school, but I was like a voracious reader. When it came to living a Black experience and not necessarily having the language I needed to deploy, I was my mother got married. We moved back to our hometown in South Carolina in 1992. Ooh, I'm old. And there was a science fair. I've always been like this little nerdy person. So yes, my degrees are in Black studies. You have to be a nerd to be a Black studies scholar. But I thought I would be the family's first medical doctor too. I wanted to be a pediatrician for the longest. So I was always in the sciences. There was a science fair. And I'm going to tell you the name of my middle school, and you're going to go, oh my. I was a sixth grader at the Andrew Jackson Middle School. Okay. And there was I didn't know at the time, I knew who he was, like a president, that kind of thing. I didn't know anything about context, being from South Carolina, but there's a science fair, and I'm never going to forget this as long as I live. And I had been, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, John, but I had come from Philadelphia, going to a magnet school. People may know, shout out to Masterman. And so everyone was 1 year ahead at this school. So by me going down south, it was like I was relearning the same material over and over again. So yes, I was smart, but it was like a practice round, right? So I knew everything already. And so I just I aced the programs. They didn't even want me to be a part of the mentally gifted. I think it was called the Eagle program because I was a young Black girl. So going to the science fair, I think I did this little project like, on my dog about like his eating habits. Like, does his eating impact his behavior? Look at me still doing social stuff before even thinking about, right? Like I would feed him rocks or regular dog food or whatever and just see how he would behave after that. And I think I got like a 98 or something on the project. And so when you get an A, you get like automatically entered into the science fair for the school.
Mm.
And I remember like there's this woman, I'm not gonna say her name. I remember her name, but a white woman. She was a white girl at the time, white woman now. And I remember her getting first place. And I'm looking at her project, looking at mine, looking at her, like, what is going on here? And I'm upset because again, I want to do well at the science fair. This is my stuff, you know? I get in the car and my mom says something like, that's the grandmaster's granddaughter. I was
Oh,
like,
shit.
the what? The grandmaster? Even then, it had not dawned on me. I've heard conversations about Black and white relationships and social relationships in our hometown. Even being in Philly, there's like this, quiet racism or whatever people would call it. And that at that moment, I was like, wow, it hit me like a Mack truck. So my senses now being keened on like what's happening through this racial kind of experience of mine. At 12 years old, I mean, I was 11 years old. I was devastated. And I I kinda not it just didn't feel like ashamed, but I felt like, why didn't I already know this information at the ripe age of 11 or 12? And so ever since that moment, it's been like, I think Black psychology will call it like the immersion stage where you just begin to just take in so many things that are like Black pride, Black facts, Black whatever, aside from your lived experiences. And so I began to read all kinds of things. And I think I started to read, I mean, because at the time I was into Babysitter's Club, love me some, was it Claudia I think Claudia was the Asian one. Whoever the Black character was, I can't remember right now, but she was my favorite, right? Because she was a Black character. And just super excited about like reading stuff. I started reading, I think someone gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X for a hot minute. And I was like, okay, I could do this. But just being engrossed in it. So by the time I got to college, because I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. High school became like my friends and I, we started the African American Cultural Club. Still wanted to be this pediatrician, right? Still wanted to be this first Black doctor in my family kind of thing. Um, Culturally, socially, just intrinsically motivated to like shine my Blackness. My friends were Black, my love interest was Black, TV I watched was Black, the music so I'm just like immersed in these things. Still, I got to Penn, and I remember being in an intro African American studies class with the incomparable Tony Montero, and I read for the first time The Souls of Black Folk. And I think linking that with my junior year reading sophomore year reading Their Eyes Are Watching God, where I felt like I was the first time I was seen as this Southern Black woman. People were struggling to read the text because of how Zora Neale Hurston was writing in dialect, and it just made so much sense to me. So like I was often asked to read it aloud in class, that kind of thing, right? So tripling the science fair experience, being seen with Zora Neale Hurston, and then reading Du Bois my first year of college, first semester, it was like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? You can't take that back home to a family where I'm the first person to graduate with a degree. You can't take that back home and say, I want to be an AFAM major. It was still a bio major. You can do AFAM as a supplement because we're looking to you to better our family, that kind of thing, right? You're at Penn because you're supposed to go to medical school. You're all these things. Had been a science nerd all my life, right? So, um, I was taking these bio classes and I was not passing them well. I mean, I would get like a C, which to me was devastated. I was devastated getting C's in college. And then Bio 102 happened. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I also don't like the sight of blood. So I don't know what I was thinking. So I was like, I'll just do math. So I became a calculus major for 7 seconds, and that was telling. I looked around me, there was no one who looked like me. There was one actually, no, let me back up. There's one Black woman, I'll never forget, she was in my, Black arts group, and she was like, "Oh, finally we get another one," right? Love her still. And I just kept thinking, "Mm-mm, I can't do this. I can't do this." And so then my roommate, my best friend, she was saying, still talk to her to this day, she said, "Why don't you just do AFAM?" And I was like, "What you mean I can't get paid with that?" I had already internalized, like, what it meant to have a Black studies degree.
Sure.
She was like, "Get paid, but you're really good at it. Like, there are people who are mad. They don't understand how you're doing so well at this thing. And then you also don't want to be a pediatrician anymore. Like, do the thing that is going to feed you, and you'll find something that you want to do with this." So her telling me that, and that was like my, I think, second semester, sophomore year. I think you have to declare it then. I was like, okay. So I became this AFAM major, and my world had already been opened up, but then I got a chance to really see, like, oh, this is, I mean, I get people can talk shit about it, but it's like a higher moral ground. It's like a higher awareness. There are things that Black studies scholars see that others struggle to see. So stepping into that thing fully was like a love letter to my 11-year-old self, that actually what you were experiencing, even if you didn't have the language for it, language does exist. There's a legacy behind this. There's all these things. And so I was coming from a particular lived experience. I was coming as an artist. I was a actress and working with the African American Arts Alliance at Penn, and also like this activism. There has been so many things happen that when I was in college, there was the affirmative action issue was happening again. A graduate student had gotten beaten outside of campus, well, across the street from my dorm at Campus Copy Centers. We had been protesting that. And then there's all kind of things have been happening. I got a chance to marry these kind of three things of who I was with Black studies. And that was the only place I felt like I could be who I was as a whole person, be surrounded by people who look like me, who were these like PhDs. I didn't even think about a Black studies PhD undergrad. I just loved the idea of Black studies. Um, so it freed me, and it also like set me about to like discover ideas, to think that about the expansiveness of Blackness, to think about, like, I always make this joke too in my classes about how, you go to college to get culture in a sense, because where you're coming from may be this multifaceted place, or maybe it's a very singular place like my Southern Black family, but in college you get to do different things. And so I made the joke about how I had never had a beef patty until I went to college, and now I love a beef.
Yeah.
I love a beef patty. Like, how did I ever live without this? It is exactly that to me. Black studies is always introducing me to new things. So I studied in college. It's the only place where I felt at home. And then I went into the workforce. I taught high school math for a couple of years and ended up being the administrator at Oberlin College. And it was there that I realized, like, oh, like, I know a lot, right? But I don't have these degrees that would get me somewhat compensated for what I know. And I was in my second year as the faculty in residence at African Heritage House, and I didn't have a master's, so I wasn't able to teach. And I realized, like, oh, like, no one has co-taught a course with me. Like, they don't give me that part. I'm really here doing this kind of um, nurturing, mothering kind of work. And to me, that's a priceless work, but they put a really low price tag on it. The college did. So
Yeah.
now let me go back to graduate school. And of course, I did the whole thing like, well, maybe I'll try a history program. Maybe I'll try, I was, again, humanities. Maybe I'll try these things. And I was just like, what am I doing? I'm going for FM or sociology. I did not like the sociology. Mm-mm. It had to be FM because I can't compartmentalize. Um, it has to be a joint venture for all of me and all of what I want to look into. So that freedom is what brought me to, and brought me out of where I was and brought me into Black studies.
I mean, I thank you for that. There's so much. I mean, it's a really textured and really rich and deep story. I appreciate you telling it, and it speaks to, as so many of these opening sort of openings to our conversations on the podcast do really show that Black Studies is not simply something, it's rarely, if ever, something that somebody just does, like as a job, right? It has these really deep roots. I mean, that's why we ask, and the responses are amazing. And when you said, that this ended up being like a love letter, your education ended up being a love letter to your 11-year-old self. I mean, that's really beautiful. It's really poetic, and it's like one of these moments of understanding for me, or hearing like how important education is, right? That education isn't just simply about a credential, obviously. I mean, we're educators. We don't think that, or hopefully. Some of us do, but most of us don't. But also that, that the education is not just about cultivating the person who we are and will be, but also reconnecting us to the kind of people we were. And so when you said that, I was like, I love that sense of the temporality of what we do as educators and what we undergo as educated people, that people who get education. So that's just a long way of saying, that really stuck out for me. I mean, it's sentimental, and I love that, but it's sentimental and a really, really deep comment on what education means for like the expanse of a life. And so, let me ask you then, I mean, having been sort of Black Studies from the beginning, and there are a number of people on the podcast who Black Studies from the beginning is sort of BA, MA, PhD. There have been a couple people whose parents were Black Studies PhDs.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's a tough one to beat in terms of roots in the field.
Yes.
But I'm interested, having been Black Studies since college, how you imagine the field. And I always ask this in the context of its founding, which came with sort of two demands that I think we inherit today. One was the demand for intellectual space, that is a commitment to the Black intellectual tradition as an imperative of Black studies today. That's so much rooted in the student demand in the late 1960s, that there be a place to study that tradition, to study Black life. And the disciplines hadn't done this. Black studies would be and has been that place. But also, of course, that origin point is the moment where Black liberation struggle had really radicalized and contested some of those boundaries between like books and community, campuses and political mobilization, ideas and prescriptive action. And I think we also inherit that in terms of the kind of political commitment that Black Studies has. And so I think there's a tension always there between its intellectual commitments, its political commitments, and the directions they pull us, and sort of asking in that context, what is that portrait of Black Studies that you work with, and how it orients and grounds and guides you?
I think me mentioning like the lived experience, or that's the artist, scholar, activist kind of paradigm. I find that in Black studies, because I feel like that's a part of my Black experience. So I can't be solely focused on like this pursuit of an academic life, or a pursuit of an activist life, or a pursuit of an artist life, without being anchored in my Blackness with all three. The field of Black studies and how I see it is that, I mean, I go back to the expansiveness of it. There's like two debates. Like, you mentioned two debates about, the intellectual kind of enterprise behind it, but also like this community count, we could say town gown kind of relationships. For me, it's been, Black studies has been open to a lot of people. Where like we can think about like other ethnic studies programs being like built off of the activism from those early 1960s, late 1960s, early 1970s establishment of programs. So you get Asian American studies, you get Latinx studies from these kind of social justice like endeavors, right? And these people say, and these folks say this all the time about a lineage. But for me, it's been not a and it's been for me like Black studies expansiveness and welcoming everyone. It invites a critical eye about like where it's limited in terms of how it thinks about how it should be as a field. So, for instance, I'll never forget this conversation I had with someone. It was like, Black studies is limited to, U.S. Blackness. It's about African. I don't even like the word African American. Is dedicated to these, or is very strongly supportive of like these things that happen to like U.S. Black people only. And I didn't get that with my education. And I'm so happy that I had like a like-minded group of people who saw Black studies as a global endeavor connected to, people would call it third world liberation, but that's Black liberation to me all over the 7 continents. We can talk about Antarctica in a minute, but it's a global undertaking. So someone said, Black studies is too centered on U.S. Black experiences, and we need to break down these things and figure these things out. And my thing is like, I'm not sure and I would never negate what your experiences are coming into a Black studies program, not as a non-U.S. Black person. Like, your stories obviously are valid. But there's something to be said about if you only see Black studies as this, that's more of an internal undertaking than you taking the field to task about those things. So yes, we are coming in to deconstruct, break down, be expansive. That's how I know Black studies to be. And that's the reason why you're even here, because if you were elsewhere, your voice would not be heard in the same particular way. So the same way that Black studies welcomes everyone, it also like has to be super cognizant of the way that people want to break it down and deconstruct it that may go against those actual foundings. So for instance, again, another example, Black studies has been super male focused at its foundings. So those kind of general male centered topics, because, well, I should say perceived male centered topics. Prison, mass incarceration, I should say, housing stuff, Black politics writ large. These things are very male-centered and male-dominated. So Black lesbians with Black feminism were absolutely brushed aside, cast aside, not taken seriously at its founding in ways like I'm so focus on, obviously, Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality and Black feminist thought. Someone like a Johnny Tillman, who's working with welfare rights, has like deep intellectual roots in the struggle, but like the thing she's caring about is not being translated to these positions, to these newly founding departments. And so, what I would like to do is say to someone like a Johnny Tillman, may she rest, someone like a Fannie Lou Hamer, someone like Septima Clark, someone like, these kind of huge, in my mind, huge pillars of Black studies. The intellectual part is obviously there. The social justice part is obviously there. The artists, because they're like cartographers of the civil rights struggle, is there. Black studies is supposed to be a place to explore them. Black studies is supposed to be a place, in my mind, right? So I can get when they say they didn't do this well for me. That's why I'm saying I don't knock the person saying that it's U.S. Black centered. They could say it's U.S. Black man centered, right? So those two things are always happening. I feel like the work is, how do we do those things in tandem? How do we do those things together? So a founding of an intellectual program that offered Black students in the 1960s these things they had been barred from, because it wasn't just like, oh, we don't offer that. It's like we're not offering that. Like it was like hard lines drawn. But taking over Bursar buildings, shout out to Northwestern, taking over the dean's office or college hall at Penn, like these things happen because of student activism. You can't unwrite that part out of these Black studies programs. And I feel like it's being written out of current Black studies. Like, I'm about to get in trouble a little bit, John. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It seems like a lot of Black studies programs, and again, I'm in the sociology program. We're going to talk about that as well. But Black studies programs I've been a part of in 3 different universities have like strong roots with the community. So they have tapped into the history of their activism because of the relationships between the Black people at the college and the Black people in the community that the college is in. They don't see the lines as like this stringent, well, that's that. It was collaboration. This happened at Penn, this happened at Oberlin, this happened at Northwestern. I would say Northwestern less so than Penn, Oberlin more so than Penn, right? But there's still always these kind of relationships. When you begin to think about Black studies on a global stage, the scholars who were not born in the U.S., but come here to work, they have a very peculiar experience to bring. Like, yes, bringing that global idea. I shouldn't say global. Bringing your country's idea of Blackness, bringing your experience about Blackness, bringing your ideas about what the university is doing with Blackness there. It just seems like the deconstruction only happens in U.S. Black Studies departments, or the criticism only is created towards U.S. Black Studies departments, when there's not a degree that says this is U.S. Black Studies. It is African American Studies, Africana Studies, African and African American Studies, Africana and African American. It's all kind of like ways to play on the words. No one says this is a U.S. centered program.
Mhm.
And so that's like the first thing. The other, that was super long, John, I know. The other side of that is there are ways that places that discard community members, and that means community members who work at the place that you work at, right? Folks who are running those front desks, those front offices, the people who are cleaning up after students, people who are cleaning up after you, people who are answering your phone calls, people who are mailing your packages, people who are picking up your packages. So those who work at the university or the college, and then people that you see every day in those neighborhoods that you go into for your groceries, or for your Uber driver, or people don't really take the bus in Middletown, your Uber driver, or the person making your food, the person who is, trying to find someone to do your hair, like all these kind of community things. It is such a divide. And I did not really see that divide until I got to Wesleyan.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it's because it's a New England thing, where it's like a cutoff between this. We are the university. And there are definitely like community partnerships happening, but I'm talking about it from a Black studies kind of situation. I do not see Black people at the university level making these relationships with the town folk or with the community members. It is happening on an individual basis.
Mm.
And I think I do it because this is my lineage, my experiences. I don't know what it's like to be Black by myself. So I am, like, my first person I met here, she works in the registrar's office. Black woman. I gravitated towards her immediately. She didn't have anything for me to do. She wasn't going to I'm not reporting to her or giving her anything, but I saw her and she and I have bonded. Our current admin assistant is a Black woman. There's Black women across the university that I feel like I just know I wouldn't be at Wesleyan without them. But there are people in Black studies who do not feel the same way. And this is like a new territory for me. I don't think I could be in a silo at a university and think I'm a Black studies scholar. Impossible. So that's a long way to say, for your question, I think that these issues, the founding and like the two proponents that you raised, to me have kind of metamorphosized into these other kind of newer issues that I think we're just not grasping, not fully grasping or tackling at the same time.
It really, what you were saying really plays on, it expands this notion of expansiveness, right? There's the expansiveness of sort of geographies and historical periods and experiences, but also that expansiveness that's more internal, right? Internal to the university, internal to the space of the university, which is always wider than the campus grounds. I mean, campuses like, I would think of like University of Maryland is literally built on a hill, right? It's like you literally go up a hill. It's a very small hill, but, all these ways that despite the geography is often trying to set apart from where they're located, right? The expansiveness that way, but also you said the expansiveness of a community, of our own workplace. And I'm just happy to hear you speak to that for a lot of reasons. Not the least of which is I sometimes get very frustrated when people say there's the campus and the community as if these things are separate. I'm like, inside this campus is an enormous community. But if you're not noticing that there's a community and it's only you and a bunch of other professors, like,
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, and let me not say too much, but sometimes I'm just like, what is wrong with you? like you literally go get lunch at the student center. Like that's a community. that we are a part of. Like all of a sudden you thought your recycling was miraculously gone from your office when you came in the morning. Anyway, I won't go on, but I like the, I mean, I think you spoke just to expansiveness broadly and in such specific ways, but also a reminder about once we think that expansiveness of Black studies inside the university's own workplace, we uncover a whole different sense of community to which we also ought to be, not ought to be, but there's something really wrong when we're not attentive to it.
You mentioned something about your university being built on the hill. I think about universities being built on bones. So
Absolutely.
you can't, I mean, obviously we love criticism and critique, but there's something about acknowledging the people who died and sweated and before this place was even established, that out of respect for those people, for those spirits, like we have to reckon with who we are right now and and who we want to be later. Yeah, it's impossible to. And I do feel like when I was at, especially, I think, again, Oberlin to me is the most place where Black studies kind of married or like blurred those or just got rid of those lines altogether about community and college. I remember going to people's houses and like students were there, right? Penn, I don't remember going to anyone's houses, but I do remember, shout out to Herman Beavers. I do remember him making sure that students were a part of all the things, whether it was planning committees, whether it was having, like I had dinner with Intozaki Shange. Like there are ways that being invited in Africana Studies, before it became, I think it was right when it was still a program. I think my last year at Penn, it became a program. I mean, became Africana Studies. And it's like my degree says Afro-American Studies. But they had the 30th anniversary of its founding. And I got to be, I'm not going to cry. I got to be like Gloria Naylor's shadow. So I got to pick her up from the train station. And then from there, it's like, I mean, I'm a little starstruck me, right? Because people I had been reading, and she was on a panel. It was like the literature panel. That's why everyone was like, "You want to be a what? A pediatrician? What are you doing?" Samuel Delaney, Maurice Condé. The exchanges I've had, I still have my poster where they all signed it. I don't think about a time where I was just a student. So in the ways that students kind of drove the founding and their activism drove the founding of Black Studies Apartments, I felt like students in AFAM at Penn definitely drove like a lot of the community that's there. And being able to be invited in to not just see these big name people and to have to that they're human too, that kind of thing. But like Toy Derricotte, Terrence Hayes, like Honoree Fanon Jeffers, like people I got a chance to just be in community with because my professors made sure that these people will come and these events are open to the public. So you would see people from like up the street who weren't quote unquote affiliated with Penn, but they would come and be invited into the space. So those things were there. Oberlin, it was church, it was community events, it was what's happening on the College Green. The College Green is a part of the community. It's not just it's not just Oberlin. Like this is the people's green, right? And Northwestern I think was a little bit different. It kind of tilted me a little bit more thinking about, there's definitely lines between activism, artistry, and academia. Like there are people who were simply like, I'm here for this intellectual pursuit. I'm not worried about any social justice stuff. And so I had gotten worried and nervous, like, did I pick the right did I pick the right program? Because it seems like activism is either played down or artistry is either played down. Or not, I shouldn't say played down, I should say at odds with these. We had 3 tracks. It was like a history track, politics, society and culture, I think it was. And then it was like the humanities, arts and humanities track. And some professors would be at odd, like, well, this is what we need to do here, this is what we do here. Not thinking about how those things all blur together, right? Like those things are, you pick those 3 tracks for a reason. And I get that you want us to be marketable for certain programs and that kind of thing, or certain jobs. But like, you can't have politics without artistry. You cannot have history without like the idea of politics, culture, and society. So, Northwestern, I got to see that compartmentalized, but there were still professors there who knew the difference, who knew how critical it was that those things remained together to kind of not just tap back to the Black Studies founding, but like what a Black Studies project might look like. And so now that I'm here, 10 years out with my Black Studies PhD, and I'm not in the Black Studies department. I know it's kind of like transition to one of your other questions. Um, it feels like I'm able to do what I have been doing in Black Studies in my sociology department. It's a very individual experience kind of thing. I don't think I could do this at other places.
Let me ask you then about your research.
Mm-hmm.
And, you've spoken a little bit about it, about your influences. But, you work with questions of gender and embodiment, Black
Mm-hmm.
feminist tradition, and sociological methods.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, there's so much to be gained from this mixture of interests and methods and critical frames. And I wanted to ask you to sort of think about your research or speak a little bit about your research as you see it, how in terms of how you see it fitting in the history of the field. So how does it fit in the history of Black studies, but also what horizons do you think it opens up, or what boundaries do you think it pushes?
When I think about Johnny Tillman saying like I'm Black, I'm poor, I'm fat, and I didn't get any kind of articles, readings about fat Black people and like in a serious academic way until I got to graduate school where I found them myself, is exactly why I do the work that I do. I just cannot very same way I don't think about how Black studies can be Black studies without Black feminist thought or without this idea of a global Blackness or like these expansiveness of Blackness. I don't see how Black studies is going to survive without thinking about what Kathy Cohen is calling, marginalized identity, secondary marginalization, cross-cutting issues. So my work fits in by tapping into that lineage of artist, scholar, activist. Um, Black fat women have been at the foreground of all kinds of political, cultural, and social endeavors. They are the women who cook the food. They are the women who braid hair. They're the women who teach children. They're the women who marry people who make future generations of Black people. Like Black fat women have been at the foreground of what it means to be Black in this country. And I don't want to start it with Mammy. I don't want to start it with this white configuration of what they are, but more so how have Black people, particularly Black fat people, survived and thrived and struggled to live around the world. Sabrina Strings already told us that, fat phobia is rooted in racism. And I'm thinking, if it's rooted in racism, then why hasn't it been such a pillar in Black studies in the way it could have been?
Mm.
And I remember back in 2011, I think it was, I went to my first American Culture Association or Popular Culture Association conference, a fat studies section. And it was like a great time. It was like wonderful times. Grad students, like I get a chance to kind of talk about the stuff I'm talking about. And it was like a mostly white section. And I love those folks. There's some good people, some good people in that section at that time. Well, still now, but not as much as the same group. But time goes on, people change, and I think people move around. But I remember there not being a lot of Black people in the audience, and I was thinking like, I don't look at fatness from a health lens, so I'm looking at it more. Of a physical or medical lens, I should say. I'm sorry, not physical. I don't look at it from a medical lens. So the way that conversations about Black fatness in particular is couched in Black studies is about like it's a problem, right? It's the health disparities, it's the food deserts, it's the chronic disease, it's the O words like obesity, overweight, like it's all these kind of negative connotations about it. And it's again something that we do at individual responsibility is wrong. And so I'm just thinking like we know this script. We've had this script for so very long. The prison mass incarceration is because there's crime. We're more acclimated to crime. Housing, you don't have the skills or education to get the degrees to make you in a different social class, right? So it's all these kind of ways that there's been like individual responsibility narratives on Black people about their detriment or about their quote unquote position, which again flattens Black people into these one kind of monolithic kind of experiences. And I didn't come to Black studies with that. So when I talk about giving myself a love letter, like finding myself in college and to my 11-year-old self, the work I'm doing right now is a love letter to the women who needed what I needed and didn't have. Um, so my work is at the intersections of obviously Black studies, Black feminism, fat studies, and fashion studies, because I don't want to talk about Black fatness as like oh, we're healthy too, or we deserve dignity too. It's like, no, we already have dignity. But I look at it from a social cultural sense through a lens of fashion to show or remind Black people that these Black fat women have been doing this for a very long time. And it's a little bit of history there, but here's how it shows up in a contemporary moment. So repeat the second part of your question for me, John. I know
Well, I
I'm
was
just
just
talking a
interested
lot.
the boundaries that it pushes, and I think you're speaking directly to that.
When I started my graduate program, well, I didn't get anything about Black fatness in the way I talk about it now when I was in undergrad. I had played Black characters. I had read Black plays. I had read, you think about reading The Color Purple and Sophia's there. There's still not a analysis about Black fatness that tells us what's going on with Sophia's life. Why she's branded as like masculine and aggressive is because of her fatness in that situation. And why she's juxtaposed to this like mild-mannered Harpo and this super violent Mister. Why Mister can't give her, she doesn't take what he has to dole out to Celie, right? So that wasn't there. I'm playing Miss One or Ada Pearl in The Wiz. Like, I'm not Dorothy, not because I can't hold the note, but because I'm not like this idea of what this thin Black ideal looks like, right? I remember going when I started teaching high school and just taking in like how some of my Black fat students were being treated. And kids can be bullies, and I experienced that kind of thing too. But it was about like the ways their uniforms fit them. I was like, these uniforms are just they're not made for fat bodies. And it's something that's as simple as a uniform can really disrupt a student's whole day, right? So if her pants are tight and people tease her, like it makes her withdrawn. Whereas someone who might be, super skinny could also be teased about it. The uniform isn't showing parts of their body that's giving them attention or making people gravitate towards them or thinking they giving out these sexual messages. So I thought about that. I thought about what it meant for my students at Oberlin to try to find clothing to fit them. A lot of them were making their clothing and just like fashioning it out of other things they could find. They were thrifting a lot there. And so by the time I got to graduate school, I already had like these little inklings of what fat studies was because I had read some things. Like 2008 is kind of when, to me, I got introduced to it. So when I started grad school, the fall of 2008, I was able to really like, okay, I'm going to hit the ground running. Let me meet with my professors and they can give me some guidance on like where to go. And I lied to you not. Not one of them had any type of introduction or familiarity with fat studies. So I was the first person to bring that to them. And I wasn't like jarred because I had, I'm a Black woman. I do. You become the master of all trades at times because you have to piece things together. That's what my grad school experience felt like. I had to become the master of all trades. I had to know what sociology was. I had to know political science. I had to know, a little bit of statistics. I had to know a little bit of anthropology just so I could get my like research agenda started. And I remember, I think it may have been Natasha Sharma sent me that call for papers for their conference that I went to with the fat studies section. But it was from me meeting her and having a conversation with her. That was their introduction as well as, that was their introduction to fat studies and my introduction to them. So I think back studies can be super, again, not how I came to it, right? When I came to it, it was expansive. But by the time my graduate kind of career jumps off, it feels like it's narrowing in a lot of ways. And I understand it because respectability politics, individual, minoritization. Like I get all the things about what's happening and why fat phobia, anti-Black fat phobia. why these things are not the fore, because it also has that personal responsibility tinge, and it's a personal endeavor. It's what you did to yourself, and Black people are the fattest, but for some reason meaning the field doesn't quite grasp that these things are rooting in the same systems that have been oppressing Black people for centuries. So I'm pushing a boundary there in hopes of giving someone else the language I didn't have when I was going through with that. And not having to just accept Mammy or just accept Jezebel or just accept, whoever. Shout out to Patricia Hill Collins and her controlling images that helped us kind of figure out what was going on with us, but not so much a idea of what fatness was doing around us. Without the value judgment, right? It's one of the actual social kind of milieu of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's first of all, thank you for that. That's really interesting, and I think a really important contribution to this series is to get us to think really hard about all those things you're talking about. And I was also struck by, and I'm struck often when people talk about boundaries that that their research does or they would like to push, how almost every single response to that, if not every single response to that, is not, here's this thing nobody thought of. It's like, here's this thing that is sitting right in front of all of
Yes.
us and has been a part of everything we've been talking about, but no one has actually just stopped to say, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you narrated that as basically that experience in the classroom and in your own reflections and in the profession, talking about a conference. So that's wonderful. So thank you. It was really this is going to make, among many other things, this conversation worth a lot of listens.
Yeah, I hope so.
And so this is just a kind of continuation of that. I'm interested how your approach to, and you kind of spoke to this a bit when you were talking about learning a little bit of this and a little bit of that to get to your research questions. But I'm interested how you think about your educational background, being Black studies from the beginning, and your current workplace in sociology, which you said it feels almost a little bit like a unique situation in terms of sociology, uniquely productive. How you think that has shaped how you understand and execute a research project, and also, if you want to speak to it, how you construct and practice a classroom.
Oh, okay. How much time do you have, John? Okay, let me see.
We pay for this recording service so we can talk all day.
I'm not the person. Okay, let me back up a little even more. Remember me saying that I had bought into, well, you can't, live well with an FM degree. You can't. It limits your, not just like earning potential, but it limits what you can do, period. And how that was debunked very early on. The way I've been able to think about my research, moving from Black studies to the sociology department. My department is unique. I think I mentioned to you that we're a small department. I'm not going to call us the anti-sociologists, right? I'm not going to say that, but although I'm going to nod my head. But we moved to deconstruct sociology in a way that many people do move to deconstruct Black studies. The only difference is I don't see Black studies as being founded as a way to support or prop up or proliferate like the project that is white domination or white supremacy. But sociology, to me, absolutely has been going in that direction for a very long time. And so it's up to the Black sociologists, Latinx sociologists, the Asian sociologists, the queer sociologists to kind of obviously the call is coming from inside the house kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So when you critique Black studies, to me, in my mind, you're critiquing that liberation struggle. Whereas if you critique sociology, you are critiquing it for a liberation. Does that make sense? So my department is unique in that obviously we teach the sociological fathers, right? But I think of one of those people as being Du Bois. I think of a sociological parent as being Ida B. Wells, as Anna Julia Cooper, right? So I don't teach these Marx folks or Durkheim or Descartes in a silo. I'm absolutely teaching them with their counterparts. It may be a little bit, the timing may be different, right? It may be a little achronological because a lot of Black people were not alive in those same spaces that they were in. Looking at you, Hegel. It's like it's all kind of, those things are going on. But I'm not teaching them by themselves to say, these are the cartographers of sociology. I don't do that.
Mm.
So for my research, it's impossible. Like I try to, for my book, John, I really try to stick to as many Black feminist theorists as I could find. Because what I found in graduate school, what I even find thinking about with some of my colleagues, people like to throw around Black feminist ideas without identifying a Black feminist who said them or who brought them to the fore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a whole kind of PowerPoint for my intro students, and I ask them, like, I put up a whole bunch of Black feminist scholars, and they don't know who they are, like, by at all. I think one person may have known who Angela Davis was. Like, shout out to Angela Davis. Like, thank you. But they did not know who Audre Lorde was. They did not know who Bell Hooks was. They did not know who Kimberly Crenshaw was. They did not know any of these people. I'm just like, I don't know how they were taught to think about these things, but you're going to see, because they could identify Marx. They could identify, I don't think they knew who Hegel was, but there's a sense that they know his name, but they may not even know Kimberly Crenshaw's name.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach what I want to teach. And I often say to students, it may feel like a Black sociology class, and that's not your bag, then that's fine. There are plenty of sections that you can visit. And, I thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But this is what I'm going to share with you all. My preference, my purpose has always been about the overlooked, the overshadowed, the recovery work for people whose ideas have been used but them not being credited. And more often than not, those are Black and brown and queer people. So my research for me is like fat. I change it. I don't say fat Black. I say Black fat, because I feel like it's a racialized fatness that has a really, really different meaning than just fat on its own or a fat Black woman. A lot of Black fat women that I have interviewed, that I study, have often talked about being made to be invisible. So you have this bigger body, this fatter body that makes you hyper visible, or people are hyper fixated on your fatness, but you're still invisibilized in terms of what that Black fat lived experience is. So my research is recovery work and uncovering their thoughts and feelings and endeavors and actions and those kind of things. And I also have a little bit of autoethnographic approach, in the sense that I've been doing this work for a long time. And there are other brilliant people out there also doing this work, but many people don't see us. And it could be like, you need to write some more. But it's also like the balance of that scholar, activist, artist life that I need to also make sure I'm tending to. So the way that translates to the sociology department is that people aren't asking me to teach, sociology of the family, or race, class, gender, or like these kind of traditional ways. My classes are Hot Mamas, Baby Got Back. I teach the sociology of Nina Simone. I have a class called Take Care, Say No. I do Black Girl Magic with a question mark. So it's steeped in Black studies. And as I use sociological methods, I'm like basically just taking Black studies and putting it right on top of sociology. So I'm making sociology branch out to talk about culture studies, to talk about literature, to talk about psychology, to talk about political science. So sociology is getting kind of a rebranding in our department too about what it can be and what it is. If we're going to talk about the study of social life, social behavior, and the social world, it's impossible to do that one way. So it has to be a multiplicity and also an interdisciplinary approach to it.
I love that. I mean, they're lucky to have that pressure on them, because I think it makes sociology. I mean, and you could put in all kinds of other more traditional disciplines. I think when Black studies, as you said, sort of was like put down on top, like set down on top, and
Mm-hmm.
makes these pressures of expanding those fields. That attunes them to the 21st century, and I think some departments are actually quite, and most places are quite good at that. I think English departments, history departments,
Mm-hmm.
but I love that you're doing that with sociology. So, um, you know, hopefully, maybe that'll be part of your legacy. It's like, she pushed even just the course title difference
Of
of,
course, and
as you
all
said
my
that.
colleagues have these classes, right? So it's not just me. It's unique to this
That's
department. My colleague Greg Goldberg teaches bad sex. My colleague Robert Autry teaches the hair class, right? So there are all these kind of ways that we are usurping what the traditional. So, and let me just say this. Let me finish that sentence, and I'll say this: we're usurping this traditional idea of the sociology of something that has been like well established.
Mhm.
Because we feel like if something's well established, then what am I propping it up for? Like, let's break that thing down. But all of my colleagues, by far, are invested in this, right?
Mm.
But not all universities, even ours, is invested
Yeah,
invested in
there's
it,
that.
right?
Yeah.
So, because there's a certain type of student who comes to Wesleyan, right? Everyone has profiles about our small liberal arts college students. That is changing. People want degrees that are marketable. People
Yeah.
want skill sets that can be recognized by these conglomerates that, okay, if you have a sociology degree, not automatically assume you can do these things. And that's just not what our department is about. So we feel pressure from like that side too about what that means for our students to come in and take these, I would say beautifully titled classes. People might call them wacky titled classes, right? But really are speaking to the endeavor of critical thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, now, maybe get my 14-year-old to look at Wesleyan a little bit differently. So.
yes, 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 yes.
Course titles, I know they're just course titles in some people's views, but I think they often, if not always, speak to something that's happening intellectually there. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
different from the perspective of students, and that's important too. But I think as professionals,
Mm-hmm.
as writers and thinkers, those course titles, I think, really do, as you were just saying, signal, the steps of a real transformation. So
Mm-hmm.
I love
Mm-hmm.
that. Well, let me ask as one of the first of the last two questions for
Mm-hmm.
you, big sort of past and future of the field of Black Studies question. In this one, I think you've spoken to in your own way, but I'll ask it anyway, which is, what do you think historically Black Studies has done well, and what do you think it has not done particularly well?
Yeah, I think I want to go back to in the beginning where I was rambling about how Black
Hey,
Studies
you weren't
welcomes.
rambling.
I wasn't rambling. Okay, thank you.
Of course
How
not. No.
how Black Studies welcomes everyone, and then it's like that's what it does great, and it's also what it doesn't is not so great at, right? So, on the one hand, there are scholars who cannot find an intellectual home, but find one in Black Studies. And they get there and they realize it is not, maybe that department is not what they thought it would be. And so it seems like it's like a tear down kind of situation of Black studies. Not so much deconstruct, like it's a literal, let's tear this down and start anew. But it's also like, well, boo boo, you didn't have anywhere to go before here. Let's make this more productive. So that's what it does great. It does great by welcoming everyone, but it does not do it great by welcoming everyone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I have and my friends and I talk about this all the time. I'm not going to indicate anybody on this, but I won't say who. But it seems like a lot of when I was in Black studies as an undergrad and as a graduate student, Black people dominated those spaces. Not just like the students themselves, but we have white students, but there's something about Black faculty, Black staff, and Black students working together towards this collective kind of liberation that makes sense. But now, and even the white people in the department who were graduate students, they knew that too. They knew what the project of Black Studies was. So it wasn't like a takeover spirit. It wasn't a takeover spirit at all. Particularly now, I'm finding at several universities, but especially in New England, I'm not going to say Southern universities as much, but even HBCUs can be indicated here. People like their Black studies through the bodies of white people. And that has been like my my what is going on? Because here's the thing. There have been white people doing Black studies forever. That's not a issue here. The issue is when universities will prefer that person over someone who's doing the same exact work. Something happened early this semester where I was told that this is so bad, but I'm going to say it. Our university basically has enough Black feminists. Okay. And I was floored. I mean, I wasn't sad. I was like, what? You fixed? Okay. So I did a little search and I was looking up the Black feminists okay, I'm counting me. And there's another Black woman in my department. I don't know if she would call herself a Black feminist, right? But she's in Black feminist in her teaching, right? So she's a Black feminist in her personal political beliefs and ideals, but her teaching, I don't think she would categorize it as such. I looked at the other people, and there's at least, I would say, 4 non-Black women, Black feminists on campus. And I'm thinking, when did that become the equalizer? How is it that these folks, and I'm not knocking anyone's scholarship, I'm not knocking anyone's talents or intellectual capabilities. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is if AFAM programs, Black Studies programs, have always been this political project about what it means for visibility, representation, Black liberation, that can't possibly come through the lived experiences of white people in this particular case, right? And the fact that you will prefer that person and not another Black woman feminist who actually is a Black woman speaks volumes to me. And I know that the current administration has its own thoughts and feelings about it. I know that this current political climate has its own thoughts and feelings about it. But I just feel like they've always had thoughts and feelings about it. This is a critical political moment. No, it's always been a critical political moment. It's always been a dire kind of reality for Black Studies departments being underfunded, we could say mistreatment, right?
Yeah.
There could be so much turnover in Black Studies departments, and it's just, for the life of me, I mean, obviously I know what's going on, but I don't even want to put a word to it, John. I just don't know what's happening. So there's something different about what it means when universities want their Black Studies departments to be white. I don't know what that's about. That's super heartbreaking. And then if you have Black faculty in these departments, what is it like for them to be, knowing your university has an agenda about these things, and obviously the job market is tenuous at best, disappointing for most things. I could consider myself one of the lucky ones or the blessed ones to have found a position. I've been here for 10 years, but it also gives me a little bit of insight about who came and who went. What is it meant to play ball in a Black Studies department that is built off of student activism, that is built off of community engagement, that is built off of this intellectual kind of trajectory of Black liberation? What does it mean to be in a department that turns a blind eye to all three of those things? Or co-opt those things as a way of saying, this is what we're doing now. We're still doing those things, but it looks like this. This looks differently now. When you go into communities and take versus go into communities and give.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that's across the board. Yeah.
No, thank you. That is really well put. And it would be, I have one more question for you, but it would be a great place to end in terms of the kind of political and cultural question that you ask. In an historical moment where I don't think we can imagine the kind of issue you're raising going away, but rather in a moment where it intensifies. So I'm glad that you put this in the podcast, because I think it's something generally for people to think about, but in 2026, it could not be like a more urgent sort of set of things to reflect on. It's a difficult reflection probably for a lot of departments and universities. So, and maybe that is your answer to this last question, but I'll ask it anyway. Thinking in a Black Studies context, what is the one question you would want us to be asking, or the one issue you'd want us to all be thinking about?
I know why we're not burning things down. My question is, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for us to? What is it going to take for us to no longer accept that what people envision Black studies could be just won't be unless we do these things? And I think like those follow-up questions are, no, what are we willing to lose? What are we willing to give up? What are we willing to sacrifice? But I feel like Black folks, Black women and queer folks in particular have been sacrificing so much. What are Black studies scholars, all of us, when are we going? What will it take for us to say no more?
Mm-hmm.
When does the fire start? James Baldwin said the fire next time. I think we have passed the next, the third, the fourth, the fifth. When does the fire start?
What a great place to end. A really poignant question. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to be thinking about that because it's an enormous question. And yeah, I mean, look, I don't think any sort of revolutionary or transformative, whatever your word you want, action is helpful when it comes from a place of scarcity or an assumption of scarcity, but rather an assumption of abundance that's being denied. And
Yep.
I look around at my university and I'm
Yep.
like, there is abundance. We ain't getting it. And that's what would it mean to think about fire this time around the fact of abundance around us and what we live with, whether that's, look, I live in one of the wealthiest areas in the country, and there are people who can't afford to eat.
Yep.
I live in a Black Studies department where it's like, yeah, don't get used to hiring ever again. But other places, so I love this as a place to end. And this has just been a fantastic conversation, Courtney. I really appreciate it. I was really looking forward to it, and it's really just exceeded anything I was really even hoping for. So this is a fantastic contribution to the series.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for your thoughtfulness and your time, as will everybody who listens in. So thank you for all that.
I hope so. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.